Good evening, everyone. Give me a few seconds here. We're just going to do some tech checks to make sure everything's working the way it should be. Good evening, everyone. All right, we can see that's working well. And now give me just a second here while I make sure. All right, good. We'll just wait for a few seconds here, or a minute here to see if anyone's going to come in. Besides, we're not supposed to start till 9, and it's not quite 9 o'clock yet. And we might as well get started because there are storms heading through the area tonight, and some might be severe. And the sky has been looking rather ominous. I don't know if any of you have been following a lot of the severe weather news, but it's been quite a wild year, and I've even been through one tornado warning myself. Fortunately, the wall cloud where I live did not touch down, but it was still scary because I had to go hide in a convenience store for a little bit. Now, as you can see, I am the Mad Computer Scientist. On this channel, I like to go over math and computer science topics that interest me. Occasionally on Fridays, and this is Friday, I like to do something different, where I look for someone's faulty logic. And today, this is someone, well, I generally ignore this person. But on this Faulty Logic Fridays, we're going to go over a Tim Pool video and see what he has to say about how the AI apocalypse is already here and AI will manipulate humanity. I'm sure Tim Pool, given his intelligence, will be telling us quite a bit that I will be impressed by. And by the way, not in a good way. So let me show the chat here to see if there is anyone. Doesn't look like it. Go to live chat. And we need one more tech check to do to see if sound's coming through on the other end. By the way, if you're new here, take a minute to like, comment, and subscribe. If you find this content useful, be sure to share it around. And if you have anything you would like me to cover, please leave a comment below. Okay, here we go. Give me just a second. All right, looks like I need to reshare because the sound didn't go through, but at least we're getting that now instead of later. Okay, let's try again.
To the point of pre-crime.
Yep.
So jokingly, we often refer to the fact that Facebook knows when you're going to poop. I don't mean they know if you're feeling it. They know when you will before you.
All right. Looks like everything's working. Now that everything's working, let's get into Tim Pool and see how much of a headache he is going to give me. By the way, if you're noticing a slight difference in sound, it's because there was a wire problem with my Blue Yeti microphone, and I had to bring back my less quality, but still very good, Blue Snowball microphone, and I will be replacing it shortly. Probably after summer is over, though. Wrong one. Give me a second. And let's go to the end here. And
you even feel it. The way they do it is, there was a great article talking about this, and they used this as a joke to try and drive the point home. People don't understand the tiny bits of data and what it turns into and what it can mean. For instance, if you were to take all of your health data and then have a doctor look at it, they're going to be like, no idea. It looks like you're healthy. But there could be tiny markers here and there that are overlooked or not seen. You take the data of every person in this country, put it into a computer, the computer instantly recognizes these seemingly innocuous things all occur in people who 10 years later get cancer. So as a doctor can't make that correlation, the computer does.
Tim Pool, already you're off to a bad start. I can see you probably got an A in statistics because you clearly did not demonstrate that you do not understand that correlation does not equal causation. Where do you get your degree again, Tim?
Facebook they know your location because most people have location services turned on. And they know that if someone sits still for 35 minutes, then gets up and moves 2 meters and then sits still again, they're going to go to lunch in 27 minutes on average. It's not perfect, but it's probabilities. And so what happens is they know when you're going to eat. They know based on all of the movements. You mentioned the phone showing all of the different places you've been and how long you were there. That easily gives them the data on when you are most likely to use the bathroom. They can also factor in proximity to bathrooms, meaning you're holding it and they know. But it's silly. But think about what that translates into. They can see you lost your job. They know that the movements you've been making in your office have been increasingly become sporadic over the past few weeks, indicating some kind of conflict or turmoil. There's stress factors. There's the frequency of messages you're sending. There's the amount of times you're going out to eat. Thus, you're likely to be fired or quit your job. This also indicates you're less.
Is there any reason why you just switch from fired from your job to quit your job? Because those aren't the same thing, Tim. Usually how Facebook knows we've quit our job is because we tell Facebook very explicitly that we quit our job. Now, I do have a problem with the way Facebook uses data. I do think data collection should be regulated. I also do know, as you're trying to point out, that sometimes machine learning algorithms pick up on really weird things. But I don't think you are the person to solve this problem, Tim Pool, because as you might have noticed just from your correlation does not equal causation mistake there, you just don't understand all the issues that can occur here. There's a reason why there's an emerging field called data justice. I suggest you look into it, but you probably won't because you think it's woke. And we all know that you were very busy trying to get the woman from the Majority Report to go skating in your skate park or something.
Less likely to have money. They can then look at how often you're driving your car, how often you're buying gas, and then predict 73.2% chance this individual will commit a crime within the next 7 to 8 months due to these factors. Then they put a flag out to a local law enforcement agency saying, here are your high probability. Yep. And all of a sudden one day you walk outside, you're still at your job. You weren't fired yet. You're likely to be.
You
haven't done anything. And there's a cop outside your house looking at you as you walk by. Then the computer says law enforcement presence has decreased the probability of crime by 17.8%. All of those things could be happening right now.
Or you're going to a Dropbox to stuff a bunch of ballots, your location
that they like, if they like it. And then what they want to happen is they want the other to get caught doing it and them to not get caught doing it.
Yeah.
So they know, and think about how crazy it is, because if we get to this point where we truly have some like sentient AI, we are.
Mr. Poole, perhaps you should actually read some of the authors that I had who wrote books with names like Algorithms of Oppression, Data Feminism, The Black Box Society, The Googleization of Everything, The Filter Bubble, and The Black Box Society, most particularly here, who tells you that things like this are kind of happening right now. Or worse things, because law enforcement is actually using a program called Palantir, which is an interesting name if you know your Tolkien, to already spy on people. The problem isn't that this can happen. The problem is the data that we are collecting is being misused, and there's no form of regulation for it. But why let reality get in your way now?
We are just pawn puppets in whatever that AI may be doing, whether it is conscious, sentient, or not. It will just be a system that runs that no one has control of anymore. And so it will know. Actually, have you guys, I don't know if you watch movies or whatever, I just watched a Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. And this is basically.
Me too.
Mr. Poole, perhaps you should actually understand what AI is before going off on a rant like this. AI is a simulation of human intelligence. We haven't had anything past the Turing test yet, and we actually use the Turing test slightly less frequently than we have in the past. Maybe you should realize what we're trying to do is create AIs for specific tasks, and no one other than maybe a few reporters who misunderstood what a Google engineer actually said will tell you that AI is sentient right now. The main problem we're having with the large language models and the machine learning software is that we don't fully understand how the algorithm works. But I'm sorry, Tim, despite what the military wants, we're still decades away from artificial general intelligence. And as far as I know, you're decades away from natural intelligence.
You saw it?
Yeah, that was great.
Yes, this is what it's about. That, Tom Cruise's character, was it Ethan Hunt or whatever, they all realize there is this AI that has infected the internet, and they call it the entity. And everything they're doing has been predetermined by probability of what the machine expects them to do. And it's really, really crazy. I don't want to spoil the movie, but the villain is chosen specifically because of his relation to the antagonist and what the antagonist will respond and how will respond. So the entity, the AI, has planned out all of this. And it's like, even though the characters know they're on that path, they're given impossible choices, which push them in the direction of what the AI wants them to do. And they can't, and like, to break free. And that's just part one. I guess part two will be coming out at some point. I like the Mission Impossible movies. They're fun.
Tim, I don't know if you know this, but let me let you in on a little secret that we computer scientists have known for a long time. The internet is not a computer by itself. And to infect the entire internet, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it would be a lot of work. Even our most extensive zombie nets that, let's say, some nation like China or even the United States, because let's face it, we do it too, might use to launch a distributed denial of service attack against a foreign nation, don't infect the entire internet. They infect specific devices, usually with specific hardware, because they're taking advantage of flaws in the software. Now, while this is an entertaining movie premise, it's just a movie, Tim. To accomplish this in real life would be a lot harder. We're not going to get Skynet anytime soon.
But the way I've described the future is, imagine a future where your job is indescribable. You have a gig app, and so, people are doing Uber and people are doing these gig economy jobs. So you wake up in your house or whatever, and you have breakfast and you're watching the news or whatever. And then all of a sudden your phone goes, burp, and, Job Quest or whatever the app is called says, new task worth $75. And you're like, oh, $75. What do I got to do? And then it says, receive this object from this man and bring it to this address. And it's a picture of a guy. And then the object is this weird looking mechanical device. You have no idea what it is. And you go, oh, easy, I could do that. And you walk down, easiest job in the world. Guy hands you the thing, like, thanks, man. You click received. Then you walk to the address, and there's some guy standing there, and he's like, you have the thing for me? Like, I sure do. You hand it to him, and then $75 in your account. You have no idea what you gave, no idea who you met, no idea what's going on, and you don't care, because now you go back home and you're $75 richer, and it only took you 20 minutes. What a great job. And what you don't realize is it's all compartmentalized through these algorithm, and you're building a nuclear bomb.
I would love to see that scenario actually play out. Tim, just a little tip here. Vault-Tec is also a fictional company. Perhaps you should stop watching science fiction and thinking it's going to play out in real life. Science fiction inspires people. And it's amazing how you're missing all the corporate dystopian nightmares that are coming about because big tech companies are laying off computer programmers because they think they can replace software engineers, even though LLMs do not write reliable code. They're not even close to that yet. We've had the same problem with taxi drivers and Uber. Tesla tried to push its AI automation technology for its cars. And while this is a good thing, Tesla overstates the capabilities of its automation. We're decades away from self-driving cars still, no matter how many times Elon tells you 1 year away.
Or you're building some kind of spaceship or doomsday weapon or new component that the AI system has determined it needed to increase its efficiency. These strange tasks that are indescribable. Right now, your app says someone wants food, and you're like, oh, I get it. But what happens when we come to this job, like already with Fiverr, we're at the point where, hey, can you do a weird miscellaneous task for some money? Once we get to the point where you've got hyper specialized algorithmic prediction models or whatever, we get to the point.
Tim, where have you been that you don't realize we do have hyper-specific algorithms prediction models? We've had those for decades. For heaven's sakes, one of the things we use them for every day is to predict the weather. But the main problem you don't seem to understand here is that most of what we have AI doing is being good at one specific task. LLMs are good at creating human-sounding text responses. Generative art AIs are good at creating art based on their training data. They're not too good at coming up with original art. What you need to do is stop thinking that all these sci-fi plots, which are designed to get us thinking about what maybe these technologies could lead to, are actually real. Sometimes they're just plots made up for a good movie, like the example you made with your Mission Impossible. It's not impossible that we could infect every device on the internet, but it's unlikely since not every device connected to the internet uses the same hardware. Now, I do agree we connect a lot of devices to the hardware we don't need to, like our coffee makers, our refrigerators, our thermostats. And I believe there are critical systems we should start air gapping. But while it is possible, it is unlikely that a single program can infect the entire internet. Also, I don't know if you know this, the internet isn't a computer. It's a network. It means it's millions of computers in this case that are all connected to each other.
Where there's an app where it could be a human running it, and the human says, I want to build a rocket ship. And so what's the easiest way to do it? Is the easiest way to build a rocket ship to sit down over the course of a few years, having all these hiring meetings and interviewing people and trying to find someone who can build something, or the McDonald's method? McDonald's, when they launched, it used to be you needed a guy who knew how to cook. You got to get that burger just right. He's going to put the fixings all on it and then serve that burger. It takes a long time. You got to pay that guy a lot of money. McDonald's said, let's hire 10 people who can get good at one thing, and then someone grills the burger. Someone puts the burger on the bun. Someone puts the mayo and the mustard on it or whatever. Someone throws the fries in. One person for every small minor task, which is easier to do.
I'm sorry, Mr. Poole. I gave you too much credit. I did not think you could possibly be this stupid. Please look up Henry Ford and the assembly line before making this point ever again.
We can get to the point where a human being with no specialties only needs to do the bare minimum of their skill set in order to help build a spaceship, a nuclear bomb, or even a skyscraper. And it sounds like, there could be some good coming from it. Oh, maybe we can more efficiently produce buildings and more efficiently align people with jobs they might want to do. But then evil people, well, of course, will always weaponize this for evil ends. Or I think the scarier prospect is the artificial intelligence just becomes outside of the confines of the humans who created it. The example I'll give you is Jack Dorsey, the best example of a human being who has guzzled their own refuse. Jack Dorsey creates Twitter. Twitter then starts, the algorithm that they implement starts pushing out an ideology, which he then starts guzzling into his own mouth. So what happens is Twitter becomes...
Did you just seriously say an algorithm which doesn't even have even the LLM capabilities for AI created its own ideology? Please tell me I misunderstood that. No, Tim Pool, algorithms do not create ideologies. Perhaps the processes, if they're complex enough, can, but algorithms just run through the instructions that are fed to them.
Becomes a sewer of psychotic, fractured ideology. He's on Twitter reading the things that he produced.
I can't imagine anyone having a sewer of fractured psychotic ideology. Where's my Jägermeister?
And then consumed. And it pollutes his brain and breaks it. And a guy who went from trying to create the free speech wing of the free speech party ends up having this interview with between I and Joe Rogan and his lawyer about misgendering policies and other nonsensical, inane ideas, because he's basically taken a plug from his own ass and shoved it down his throat. It's this information sewer of Twitter, the algorithm he created, the unintended consequences feeding himself. So when we look at YouTube,
Tim, I'm going to let you in on another secret. Jack Dorsey did not create all of Twitter's algorithms. And if you're about to say Elon saved Twitter, you clearly haven't been on Twitter lately. It's become Gab 2.0.
And how they're feeding all of these children these shock videos. What's going to happen is human society begins consuming its own waste and refuse. These kids grow up with fractured minds because of this insane information they absorbed as children. And this leads to not a utopian future where AI gives us a better life. It leads to children growing up having deranged views of what is or should be. These kids who watched this weird stuff of Hitler, in a bikini, how many of them are going to have depraved, degenerate predilections where...
I can't imagine that any, let's say, millennial with a YouTube channel who grew up with all of this might have deranged, degenerate ideas.
Where they're begging their wife to put the Hitler mustache on and other weird nonsense, or showing up to work in bikinis with Hitler mustaches because as a child, this is what was jammed down their throat. Not everybody, but a lot of these kids may end up this way. And so one of the ways I describe the future is in the most...
Tim, did you just engage in kink shaming? I mean, that's a weird thing to bring up, but I personally don't get it. But hey, if people like it and they're not hurting anyone, I don't care.
The inane way possible is corn. A future where all anyone ever talks about is corn. The biggest shows with 80,000 people in the stands, and there's a husk of corn sitting on the stage, and they're all just screaming, "I love it!" And then a guy walks up, and he's like, "Would you get the corn done today?" Like, corn? Yeah, corn's great. Why? Well, in the United States, we produce crap tons of corn, and so at the most simple way to explain this, the AI will be told to prioritize what humans need and desire, and it's going to look in the data and see that humans love making corn for some reason. It's going to then start prioritizing low-level corn production. It's going to then start prioritizing the marketing of corn. And then eventually you have Taylor Swift on stage in a corn costume, shaking and dancing, going, corn, corn, corn. And that will be normal to the people in this country because the algorithms have fed them this. Now, we can...
And you don't think things like this happen already? Please get out from your rock.
See the absurdity of corn. That's the point I'm trying to make. You can't see the absurdity of the invisible. So when, and this is how I explained how they target children.
Geez, Tim, I wonder why you can't see something that's invisible. Did you even think about that before you said it?
as adults, if we were told on YouTube to watch this video of Tucker Carlson complaining about immigration, we say, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll watch that. Next up, Hitler in a bikini doing Tai Chi. We'd be like, what? That's insane. Well, because we're adults. We've become more resilient to the oddities and absurdities of the world. We've developed personalities and perspectives. Children don't have that safeguard. They'll just say, okay, I guess. They'll watch it. It will then become a part of their psyche and their worldview.
I have no idea why this is crossing my mind, but Mr. Poole, I really want to see who you subscribe to on OnlyFans, because I bet that's going to be an interesting look into your psyche.
When they're older, it won't be as something as obvious as corn. It can be psychotic things like I mentioned, Taylor Swift coming out on stage dressed up like a demonic winged Hitler, screeching into the microphone, not even making any sounds, or not even like any discernible sound or pattern. And people in the crowd just going, screaming and clapping and cheering for it because an amalgamation of nonsense was fed into their brains. And that's the world we've created through this system.
Can I just connect up what you just said with what we've been discussing, earlier? Right now, Google, Microsoft, some other companies to a lesser extent are integrating very powerful AIs into their search engines and other tools that they have. So their AIs are becoming part of those. So here's what's happening. More and more, the bias in search results, search suggestions, answer boxes, the bias is actually being determined by an AI. Now, what this means is
Okay, let's unmute myself before speaking first, and let's stop him right there. The bias is not being determined by an AI. Once again, you misunderstand how large language models work. Now, I know you're not a computer scientist and you don't have a computer science degree. Let's correct this right now so people can stop making this mistake. The bias is determined by the training data that the AI receives. In many cases, this is training data pulled from the internet. Now, a lot of people have claimed that ChatGPT has a liberal bias. It doesn't. A lot of the training data may show a slight liberal bias, but if you ask ChatGPT to praise Trump, it actually will. Maybe you should try it sometime and actually double check what you're saying before speaking. But the fact that training data, as well as just data collected from user patterns, can show a cultural bias is not surprising. It's something the very authors I was mentioning earlier are actually trying to address. You might be surprised that a lot of the programs that are being used are creating sociological problems, not computer science problems, and this is why sociologists are starting to address it.
Is that to some extent right now, it's AIs that are picking who's going to win elections. Because think about it, the executives or rogue employees at Google, they're not going to be interested in every single election, right? So that means that the vast majority of elections are in the hands of the algorithm itself. But now the algorithms more and more are in the hands of smart AIs, which are getting smarter and smarter very, very rapidly. What this means is we are headed, at full steam, we are headed toward a world in which AIs are determining what people think and believe and who wins elections.
Yeah, all kinds of elections.
Do you have any evidence of that particular claim? I would love to see it. No, AIs are not determining the results of elections, and no, a cosmic ray did not flip a bit in a vote counting machine, causing Joe Biden to win the election by exactly 2 to the 23rd, more votes than were actually cast. No matter how hard I tried to spread that rumor.
All kinds of elections.
And then once the programmer consumes the refuse of the AI, they become slaves to it.
But this
And
is
the
What the hell are you talking about? If a program... Tim, please have some knowledge of the topic before speaking. There's a well-known computer science acronym that programmers have used for years. GIGO. It stands for garbage in, garbage out. The programmer will know when AIs are producing garbage data. They also actually expect what are known as hallucinations, which are when LLMs produce the wrong answers. The problem is there's no evidence that anyone is using AIs to determine the outcome of elections. Where are you even getting this? Let's see, does he have any links down here? Maybe a source? No, just a useless link to his Teespring store.
candidates.
Yeah.
And the candidates become captured as well.
now over and over again, and I realized on this issue I'm a broken record because I've just got to get this into people's heads.
Well, something about you is broken, but it's not that you're a broken record.
This is another reason why we have to monitor, why we have to capture this kind of content so that it can be used to at least to try to create effective laws and regulations. It can be used to bring court cases, file lawsuits against these companies. It can be used in clever ways by AGs and members of Congress. It can be used by public interest groups to apply pressure.
Clearly, you've paid no attention to members of Congress, especially the ones who are most likely to misuse AI if you think it's going to be used in clever ways.
You've got to collect the data. So again, I'm going to send people to mygoogleresearch.com because we desperately need people to sponsor our field agents. I'm saying is this, there are problems that you can imagine things happening in the future. I'm saying a lot of this is actually happening right this second, right now. And these elections, I mean, you brought me back to 2016. That election was rigged. I mean, here was Trump.
It wasn't rigged enough, though. Hillary tried. She was using old school methods.
All right, at the end of this video, after it's processed, probably sometime tomorrow, I'm going to put up a list of books I've read so you can actually get a good idea of what the problems actually are, because you can't trust these guys, and you shouldn't just take my word for it. They are touching on some real issues, almost, but as usual, they're trying to put some weird political spin on it, and I don't know who his guests are, but Tim Pool is not educated enough to know what the real problems with AI are. He's just making stuff up.
The old school stuff the ballot box, you get ghost voters to vote, but they've advanced to the next.
But that wasn't really the rigging. The rigging
that was some level rigging, but it wasn't.
I'm like, I bet they've been doing that for 200 years.
Oh
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
oh
Like,
yeah, Chicago, Kennedy, right? New York City,
that's
Tammany
normal.
Hall.
This is just politics.
It's
that's
politics.
just normal, and that's inherently
Right.
competitive, and it's
Funny.
not really a threat to democracy, not really. But now you have a different kind of impact, which is a threat to democracy. It undermines democracy because when these big companies want to favor one party or one candidate, there's nothing you can do. You can't.
Or hear me out. We have not LLMs doing this, but the weak eye that Twitter uses further, and Facebook, and Google to a lesser extent, filtering people in to the information they think these people want to see. So they're not getting anything moderating out these viewpoints. So we have people essentially believing in two different forms of reality. One that's real, and one that's conspiracy-laden that tends to be the type that Tim Pool favors. There are ways to combat this, and the easiest way is what Reddit does and just not use those content selection algorithms. Because these content selection algorithms cause us each to have our own bubble of information, which can lead us into echo chambers. Now, this filter bubble is something that existed before, but before we had the internet, these filters were much less personalized to our individual tastes. Now, this is an unintended problem of these weak AI algorithms. It's not something Twitter, Facebook, and Google set out to do. It's just something their algorithms did. And that's one of the reasons why this channel's title is Mad Computer Science. Computer scientists haven't had to think about what their creations do for the longest time because their effects were so limited. We can no longer do that. We have to start thinking about what societal impacts, what that will come from what computer scientists do. And we have to stop just doing things because tech bros say they're a good idea. Occasionally we have to say, no, Elon, this is a really bad idea and we shouldn't do it.
Can't counter it. You can't even see
Is
it
it
unless
is it
you're
election
monitoring.
interference in your mind? Are they interfering with elections? Is it
this undue
subversive? Is it
influence?
insurrection?
Is it happening? You're just assuming it is. You've provided no evidence.
It's insurrection.
From my perspective, given the rock solid numbers I've been looking at for years,
Mhm.
yes, this is election interference. This is undue influence.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think it's more than interference. I think we need to escalate that rhetoric. It's more like election control.
Mhm.
I mean, they own it. They own the elections. They're not interfering. They're running our elections. They have subverted. They have. I would say this is seditious. That Google is committing engaged in a seditious conspiracy against the United States.
We calculated that as of 2015,
Google is engaged in a seditious conspiracy against the United States. Google is only interested in making money, Tim. Stop believing like all these companies want to overthrow the government. Most of the time, they just want to control the government in such a way as to allow them to do what they need to do. They don't want to be a government because that means they actually have to worry about the needs of the people.
Google alone was determining the outcomes of upwards of 25% of the national elections in the world. And it's gone up since then. As internet penetration has increased, that
Determining or predicting? Because predicting is not that hard.
percentage just keeps increasing and increasing.
Hmm.
So,
It would just be so funny if, like, what's really going on is that, Sundar Pichai or whatever, he walks into a big room and there's a gigantic, like, red light, and he's like, Google, tell us what we must do. And then it's like, the next moves you will make. And it's like, the AI just owns them already, and we're sitting here complaining about it. Doesn't even care. That's an interesting thought, though. I mean, how are we? I mean, the fact that we're able to have this conversation at all means it's not lost.
I really shouldn't have left the alcohol in the refrigerator. I had a feeling that I probably would need it, but if I kept it too close, it could lead to bad consequences. But Tim, Google is not interested in limiting your speech or preventing you from doing your insane little podcast. Google, or rather the parent company of Google that also owns YouTube, is making money from your YouTube presence, which is sad because you are actually and provably a detriment to society.
I don't know, because there is a kind of control, that's called benign control. And my mentor at Harvard, I was B.F. Skinner's last doctoral student there. He believed in benign control. Now, if he hadn't been cremated, he would be actually rolling over in his grave right now, seeing what actually happened. Because what he...
All right, B.F. Skinner, after a quick Google search, was a psychologist. This makes you an expert on artificial intelligence. How? Please tell me where you got your computer science or computer engineering degree.
He had in mind was there'd be these benevolent behavioral scientists, and they'd be working with our government leaders, and they'd be helping to create a society in which everyone is maximally creative, happy, and productive. That's what his idea was of benign control. But we have a different kind of benign control that's actually come about, and it's private companies that are not accountable to the public. They're in control, and from their perspective, they're benign because everything they're doing is in the interests of humanity. That's where we are, and it's really hard to. How do you get the people at Google to understand that what they're doing is unacceptable? Even
There are plenty of people at Google who understand that what they're doing might be unethical. But I'm going to let you in a little secret. Those of us who really like computers are more interested in, can we do something, not should we do something. And this is why we need to, I don't know, maybe not focus so much on the STEM part of computer science, but maybe go a little more into the humanities and make sure there's some ethics teaching.
even if we don't have specific laws in place,
It's a battle of influence and power and authority. They're not going to. They don't care.
Google is not going to do anything that's going to affect their bottom line willingly. That's why we need better regulation. That's the one thing you got right in this entire podcast.
live in their world where they're drones to the machine, and you can't wake up a person who's built for it.
I do have some good news, which is that some of the AGs I've been working with over the years, they're just waiting. They're waiting until our system gets big enough. They're waiting till.
Why would you be working with attorney generals on artificial intelligence? Attorney generals are usually lawyers. Have you proved that Google broke the law, or is this just mere speculation that Google overthrew the results of an election somewhere? I don't even think you're using the word determine correctly. I think Google just predicted the results of these elections, which honestly any data scientist with enough computing power could probably do.
Till we have enough data, and they're gonna try one legal theory after another. That's what you were doing just now.
Yep.
They're gonna try out one legal theory after another to take these companies down.
So they're going to do nuisance lawsuits against Google, one of the largest and wealthiest corporations on Earth. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to work well. They'll probably just buy out the AGs like they always do, like your oil company friends do.
But you can't do it without the data. Last year, the Republican Party, I don't know if you remember this, sued Google because Google was diverting tens of millions of emails that the party was sending to its constituents and was diverting them to spam boxes.
Yep.
That got kicked out of court almost immediately.
Yeah, because that's just an algorithmic decision. I would mark that stuff as spam too, because it would just get annoying.
Because they didn't have the data. But we can monitor that. We can monitor anything, and walk into court with a massive amount of very, very carefully.
And I'm willing to bet an equal number of emails from the Democratic Party got sent to spam too. Heck, I found myself on Trump's emailing list, and I have no idea why.
Collected, scientifically valid data.
I think we're well beyond courts working and it mattering. With the AI stuff we're seeing, there was this really crazy video we watched last night on the show of a car burning, and it was generated in Unreal Engine. But if
Unreal Engine is not an AI program, it's a game engine.
Were it not for them revealing that it was AI that was generated by the program, it looked.
Please learn the difference between artificial intelligence and just a program. They are not the same thing. Now, certain programs do use a small level of artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is just an attempt to simulate human intelligence. And in fact, most of the games you yourself play, Temple, do have a small amount of AI for NPC interactions and for the fights with the NPCs.
Real. So what happens now when audio gets released and it's Donald Trump saying something naughty, and Trump sues for defamation? He goes to court and he says, this is an AI.
Oh, for heaven's sake. I am not a lawyer, but Donald Trump cannot sue for defamation successfully. Donald Trump is a public figure. In the United States, at least, public figures cannot sue for defamation. At least not easily.
AI generated audio of my voice. And the court says, prove it. What do you mean? I heard you say it. And then he says, I have an expert here. And the expert says, I looked at the waveform and using the forensic tools, it determined it is an AI. And then the defense goes, we've got an expert here. This expert says, no.
I have no doubt there will be eventually reliable forensic tools to determine if something is an AI. Right now, they do not exist. The AI detection tools to determine if someone wrote their own program or not, for example, or their own essay that colleges sometimes used, are hugely unreliable.
No, we checked it and it sure, no, it's real. Trump said it. That's it.
We had this case yesterday. I mean, 2 days ago, where it was the DeSantis campaign was putting in images of President Trump and Fauci.
Oh, that was a couple months ago.
It was a while. Okay, yeah. There was some news. Yeah, there was somebody that put it out that they
DeSantis campaign did.
Yeah, but they proved which one was the fake one and which one was the.
We covered this extensively. Yeah. Now the issue here is the DeSantis campaign falsely generated 3 images of Trump, or I should say, generated 3 images of Trump hugging or kissing Fauci, put them alongside real images, and then wrote real life Trump over it. Now, the AI isn't to the point where it is to the point where they can get away with it, but they did not do a good.
They could have done this without AI, Tim. We've had this technology for a while. It's called Photoshop.
Enough job. Text in the background on one was garbled nonsense because we're not quite there yet. And it was quickly pointed out. It took a couple days before people realized what they had done because nobody scrutinized the video to a great degree. The DeSantis campaign asserted their right to fabricate images to manipulate the voters and have still not, as far as my understanding is, they never took it down. And they've defended their right to do it because other people have made memes in the past. And I think this is abject evil. They're basically like, they want to trick people into thinking Trump hugged and kissed Fauci. Now, Trump was very favorable to the guy. And I think that criticism is welcome.
But Trump was favorable to Fauci? What universe were you living in?
But this is a whole new level of opening the door towards just abject evil. The issue becomes, we're 6 months away. In fact, we're probably already here.
90 days from the Iowa caucus.
Oh, but I think we're already at the point where technology can create images and video that is indistinguishable from real life.
There's a lot of it out there.
And there's no way to prove it.
Right.
The only issue is, has the public accessed it and learned to properly utilize these systems just yet?
Oh, they soon will.
11 Labs is a program where I can take 15 seconds of your voice and instantly recreate it. I love it. You watch these movies like Mission Impossible, and they're like, they need the guy to.
I get it. You like Mission Impossible. But Tim, may I suggest another movie? I just watched a fun one. It was called Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire. Had Mothra at the end. It was just as realistic as anything you've said on this podcast.
Say this sentence. And then once he does, they're like on the other line and they have the computer in the suitcase. And it's like, the guy's giving a note and he's like, why am I reading this? Like, well, can you read the line, sir? It's for the, okay, so the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog at midnight to follow the crow. What is this all about? And then they're like, we got him to say it. And then they press a button that replicates his voice. You don't even need that. You can take 12 seconds of someone just saying, I woke up this morning to get breakfast and I had bacon and eggs. And just with that alone.
You have every digital component to make it into whatever. Yeah.
And so you can go to 11labs.io right now and it's like $5 and you can run anyone's voice in this.
This is one of the weirdest paid advertisement spots ever.
A year ago, some students cloned Joe Rogan's voice and it was shocking. Everyone was like, oh my God, how did they do what? And they took.
Why would it be shocking? It would be shocking if Joe Rogan actually said something that was actually in line with actual science.
The website down saying, it's not fair to Joe and we just wanted to prove that we could do it. Now there's a public website where anyone for a couple bucks can replicate any voice. How will you be able to prove it in court? You can't. Why? It's going to come.
Well, what I usually see it used for is pretty easy to prove that it was not the actual person doing it. Like Mr. Krabs never recorded the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
down to experts. The Kyle Rittenhouse case may have been one of the first cases, and I'm not a legal expert, where we saw the prosecution attempt to use AI-generated images to convict someone of a crime. It may not be the first time, but this is a high-profile case. And what happens is the prosecution shows a grainy camera image of Kyle Rittenhouse, and then they digitally zoom so you can look closer.
I think I heard something about this, and what Tim Pool is saying there has been disproven. It was a conspiracy theory, unsurprisingly, but I would have to take some time to look it up and do research. And when it comes to Kyle Rittenhouse, his story is mostly over, and I just don't care that much anymore. He has ruined his life for at least a decade to come, and I hope he actually learned something from what he did and can focus his life on better activities.
Digital zoom is an AI-generated image. There's no way to create pixels to show what it really was. The computer makes its best guess as to what would be there as you zoom in, and then AI generates an image of what it thinks it would be. They then told the court, see, he's pointing the gun in this direction. Now, what happened was the judge allowed them to admit AI-generated images.
Crazy.
And when the defense said that is AI-generated, the judge is like, well, I don't know. Let the jury decide.
And why would you expect a judge to be able to determine if an image is AI-generated? A judge is not a technology expert, usually. A judge is an expert on the law. The defense should have been able to bring in their own experts to tell if it was AI-generated, and the prosecution should have brought in their own experts to counter the defense experts. All right, that's enough of Tim Pool. I do have a slight headache. I'm sure if I were to measure my blood pressure, it would be elevated. But I have some good news on this front. I actually encountered something that's not political and not religious that's going to be the next few Faulty Logic Fridays. If you're familiar with the actor Terrence Howard, he has some interesting ideas about math and some math proofs that I'm sure you don't even need to have taken anything beyond high school algebra to debunk. So we are going to cover teriology in the next few Faulty Logic Fridays. Thank you for watching, everyone. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell. Be sure to leave a comment. And now that we're done here, go out and write some excellent code.